Well, howdy. Today it's an online lesson. We'll be covering European exploration, and we'll be looking at why were the Europeans exploring, what were they looking for, the new technology they were using which helped them in their explorations, and the countries and certain individuals that played a big part in the early period of European exploration. Let's go ahead and get started. So let's take a look at, first off, why these Europeans began exploring. There was a desire initially for new trade routes. There was a long history of trade with China, Japan, and the Indies. And Marco Polo, who was an Italian explorer, found many riches in China. And this raised people's interest in exploration. He found things such as silk, spices, jewelry, and gold. There was a lots of money to be made, and Europeans wanted a quicker and cheaper but a safer route to get to Asia. So, some other reasons that Europeans began exploring and moving outside their borders were known as the three G's: God, gold, and glory. First of all, if we look at God, missionaries had a desire to convert others to Christianity, and they thought that was their duty to go and find these uncivilized individuals and convert them to Christianity. Second is gold. Rulers wanted to increase their wealth through trade with the Indies, and by doing that, they're going to be able to get more gold, a very precious metal. And finally, glory. Explorers and the rulers they explored for wanted to become famous for their discoveries. So there was some motivation to discover new lands, new trade routes, and new goods. Now, in order to take some of these very long and dangerous trips, mostly in uncharted territory, there was some new technology that had been invented which helped early explorers navigate their way around the world. First was the compass, and this helps ships stay on course. Always points north, helps you to determine which direction you're going. And then the next was the astrolabe, and this helped determine their latitude, so where they were latitude-wise on the Earth. And finally, the triangular sail. Now, this let ships navigate against blowing winds because of the angle of the sail, and they could always adjust it so they would catch the wind, and then it would help propel them in the direction they wanted. With these new technologies, countries were ready to make a jump and start really exploring this world. And Portugal was the first country that got a head start. Bartholomew Diaz, for example, he sailed for the Portuguese. He sailed to the southern tip of Africa in hopes of making it to Asia. And Vasco da Gama, who was another Portuguese sailor, sailed around Africa to India. And Portugal now had found a route to the riches of Asia. And if you look on the map on this slide, you can see the routes that these two individuals took. The Spanish, seeing their neighbor Portugal already get out and start exploring the world and establish some new trade routes quicker to the Indies, became very jealous and did not want to be outdone by their smaller neighbor. So, jealous of the success of Portugal, Spain was so eager to gain power and wealth by establishing trade routes to Africa and Asia. And this allowed for an eager sailor from Italy named Christopher Columbus to approach King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella with an innovative idea. So after pleading with the king and queen, Columbus was given the funds and the ships, and in August 1492, Columbus set out with three ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. After 3 months at sea, on October 12th, the crew of the Pinta spotted land at 2 a.m., and convinced he had found a new route to India, Columbus rowed ashore and planted the banner of Spain on the beach. Once he arrived in this new world, Columbus spent about 3 months exploring the islands, and he found signs of gold. And eager to report this news, he sailed back to Spain, and with him, he brought gold, pearls, and parrots. He also brought natives, and these natives did not go on their own accord. Columbus, and some of you may not know, was a brutal explorer, and he killed and he caused the death of many, many individuals, especially on his first landing. And the people that he brought back with him to Spain, they were used as slaves. They didn't go on their own free will. So that's something to keep in mind. Columbus may not be the great guy that we've all heard about in some of the earlier years when we've talked about him. He brought things that the Europeans had never seen before as well. He brought tobacco, pineapples, and hammocks. And after 3 more trips, Columbus would die in 1506, still believing he had reached India. However, we all know that that wasn't the case. He in fact had found a new world that had been pretty much unknown and unmapped before. And he never realized the true impact of his voyages. It is important to mention that Columbus really wasn't the first European to make it to the Americas. The first European was actually a Viking known as Leif Erikson, and he and his Vikings had founded what is present-day Iceland. So he was really the first one that was able to find this new world, although he is not credited with this find. And from Columbus and the other explorers that came after him, we developed this system known as the Columbian Exchange. And from the Americas to Europe, Africa, and Asia were sent maize, potatoes, sweet potatoes, beans, peanuts, tomatoes, pineapples, tobacco, and slaves, for lack of a better term. And from Europe, Africa, and Asia to the Americas was sent wheat, sugar, bananas, horses, pigs, chickens, smallpox, measles, and typhus. That's right, a lot of the diseases that came from the old world, Europe, Africa, and Asia, made it here, and most of the natives could not handle that, and it led to the die-off of thousands and thousands of people. So that about wraps things up. Next, this class will be talking about Christopher Columbus and whether he was a hero or a villain. It is up to you to decide.